like a Hellcat.
Hello and welcome back to the channel, where once again it's time for another review, where today we're taking a look at something a little bit different, because we are indeed taking a look at the Panzer Dragoon remake, which saw release in March of 2020 on a variety of current gen systems, and of course it is a remake of the 1995 original. So the story of Panzer Dragoon follows that of a character named Keel, who's a member of a hunting party who encounters a fight between two dragons, the Solar Wing and the Dark Dragon. The rider of the Solar Wing is mortally wounded in battle, and he entrusts his mission as well as his dragon to Keel, and Keel must then stop the Dark Dragon from reactivating an ancient ruin and wreaking havoc on the world. So once the main menu hits, you'll see you've got a choice of start game options and stats. Heading into options, you'll see you've got a few sound settings, gameplay settings, input mapping, and language selection options that you can modify. Once you've selected your difficulty, you are thrust straight into Mission 1, just like you were in the 1995 original. Just like always, we'll be talking about how the game looks, how it sounds, how it plays, its content and lifespan, and of course, whether it is worth playing. So like always, I'm going to start with visuals first, and the first thing you'll notice about Panzer Dragoon Remake is that it recaptures the feeling of the original game very well. Everything here brings back memories of the first game in the series, just with a completely fresh lick of paint, and the game looks very, very appealing visually. Your character model, your dragon, all of the enemies look top quality in my opinion, and the stages in particular look absolutely spectacular. The sky, the water, the mountains, all the other environments that you travel through look very good in my opinion. And you have to remember, this was a budget release game. It wasn't a big title that had loads and loads of resources plundered into it. It didn't get a physical release. It was released as a download only budget game, and so I think in that regard it makes it a little bit more impressive in my opinion. And the game runs spot on as well, at least on the PS4 Pro. I couldn't possibly comment on the Xbox or the Switch versions of the game, but the PlayStation version runs absolutely fine. I feel overall, visually and in its performance, Panzer Dragoon Remake is a great game. So moving on to the sound effects and music next, and if you've watched any of my previous reviews that I've done on the first three games in the Panzer series, Panzer Dragoon Zwei, and Panzer Dragoon Saga, you will know that I've spoken very highly about the sound effects and music for all three of those games, because I feel they just got better and better as the series went along. Panzer Dragoon has a fantastic soundtrack. Zwei's, I felt, just added more of it, and Panzer Dragoon Saga had a different style, but it was still equally brilliant. And one of the fantastic things they've done here is they've just simply reused the soundtrack from the first game, which means you've got top quality tunes that fit all of the stages absolutely brilliantly. I don't think you need to redo everything when you make a remake of a game, and I think the soundtrack is a perfect example of that with Panzer Dragoon Remake, because the music was fantastic, which means the music for this game is also fantastic. The sound effects are brilliant as well. There is nothing to complain about there. The cries of your dragon, the firing of the lasers, it all sounds great, which means overall in sound effects and music, there isn't a bad thing to say about Panzer Dragoon Remake. Some people will say that they were lazy by not redoing the music, but I simply don't think they needed to. So of course what I will do is give you a few examples of some of the tunes within the game. So moving on to the gameplay next, and if you have been living under a rock for the last 30 years and you've no idea what Panzer Dragoon is all about, it is an on-rail shooter where you automatically move through levels, gunning down hordes of enemies and then finally a huge boss at the end of a level. It really is mindless blasting from start to finish, something that you can just turn on, take some frustrations out on, and then turn it off. In terms of the way it plays, it really does play exactly like the original. Instead of moving with the D-pad though, you move with the analog stick. You fire your weapons with X or circle. Holding X will do a lock-on move, so you can hit multiple targets at once, and you can rotate the camera right and left with the R and L buttons in a 360-degree notion. That really is it. It plays exactly the same as the original game, and this is almost a double-edged sword, because if you played the original game, you can come into this, understand how it works, and have a great time. If perhaps you're a newer gamer coming to it, you may well feel that the gameplay is very limited because they haven't actually added anything at all in the remake. There are no barrel rolls, there are no dual analog controls. You move with the left stick and you also aim with the left stick, which means your dragon has very limited ability in terms of evading enemy hits. Sometimes you'll feel like there's nothing you can do about it and you're being struck by objects. For me, this is an area where they could have actually improved the game. They could have given you a choice, I should say, of controlling methods. They could have left it the original one, or they could have added in a slightly more modern control scheme where you've got additional moves for your dragon, or of course perhaps dual analog control for moving and aiming separately. I think this game would have slightly benefited from that, and it probably would have made it more appealing to people as well. But as it stands, it is just a nostalgic throwback with very little depth. So moving on to content and lifespan next, and we've got 6 stages here with bosses at the end of every stage and video sequences to tie the storyline together through each stage. Once you've finished the game, which will take about an hour or so to play through, you can unlock the Pandora's Box menu, which will give you access to artwork and also give you a few more additional options that you can tweak for the next time you play through it. You can choose what level you want to start on, you can turn invincibility on, which is known as God mode, and you can also turn on rapid fire, which means your dragon acts like it's got a machine gun when you hold the circle button. That really is it. You've also got the additional episode 0, just like on the first game too, but there is no additional content here over the original game, and this is probably the game's biggest drawback because it's such a short game and it doesn't have massive replay value. There really isn't much here to keep you coming back. It's the kind of game that you'll play through maybe once a year, if that, for a nostalgic throwback here and there. I feel they could have added some additional content, whether it was additional paths in the main game to give you different levels to go through, or perhaps some mini games or something that you could unlock at the end of the game, but there is nothing here. So really, in terms of content and lifespan, the game does perform quite poor. As always, that leaves me with my final question. Is the Panzer Dragoon remake still worth playing now, 5 years or so after it came out? And my answer is a thorough yes, partly because it is so cheap. It's usually on offer for around about £2.50 on all of the stores here in the UK, so it is an absolute bargain. And of course, if you were a fan of the Panzer Dragoon series, you'll have a massive sense of nostalgia when you play this game, and you will appreciate exactly what it brings to the table. If you come into this game expecting new gameplay mechanics or an additional content, you will be disappointed, though. I have to point that out. Now, I do plan to review Panzer Dragoon Auto in the future, and potentially the Panzer Dragoon Game Gear game. But for this week's review, Panzer Dragoon Remake, let me know your thoughts down below. Do you agree with me, or do you feel differently? Do you think it still gives you that sense of nostalgia that I say it does when you play it? Give me your thoughts down below, and like always, I'll be back in the near future with another review. Goodbye for now.